There is a strange kind of disappearance that doesn't involve an argument, a betrayal, or even an obvious reason. Someone who used to reply quickly starts taking longer. They stop joining group conversations. They decline invitations. Eventually, you realize you haven't heard from them in weeks. And when you ask what happened, they may simply say, "I needed some space." What makes this especially interesting is that the person may be intelligent, socially capable, and perfectly comfortable around others. So why would someone who can understand people so well choose to step away from them? The answer is more complicated than they don't like people. And once you understand what can happen inside the mind of someone who repeatedly withdraws, their silence can start to look very different. First, intelligence itself does not make someone antisocial. Being highly intelligent doesn't automatically mean being introverted, emotionally distant, or uninterested in relationships. Intelligence is a broad set of abilities, and personality is something different. But some people who are highly reflective spend a great deal of time processing their experiences internally. They may notice patterns, contradictions, and subtle changes in relationships that other people simply move past. Imagine sitting at dinner with 5 friends. Everyone is laughing, but one person notices that a friend's laugh sounds forced, another has been unusually quiet, and someone else keeps checking their phone. Instead of simply enjoying the evening, their mind starts asking questions. Is something wrong? Did I miss something? Why does this feel different? That kind of constant monitoring can make social interaction mentally expensive, and this leads to a surprising distinction. Some people don't disappear because they dislike being around others. They disappear because they become tired of constantly processing what happens around them. Social interaction requires more mental work than we usually realize. You are reading facial expressions, interpreting tone, predicting reactions, deciding what to say, monitoring your own behavior, and updating your understanding of another person. For someone who naturally analyzes everything, a simple conversation can continue long after the conversation has ended. You say something slightly awkward at lunch, and everyone else forgets about it 5 minutes later. But your mind replays it that night. Why did I say that? Did they misunderstand me? Did I sound rude? This is where reflection can become rumination, which means repeatedly thinking about the same experience without reaching a useful conclusion. And there is an important difference between the two. Reflection can help you understand an experience. Rumination keeps the experience alive. That may be one reason some people begin choosing solitude. Alone, there are fewer social signals to decode and fewer expectations to manage. The mind finally becomes quiet. What looks from the outside like isolation can sometimes feel from the inside like relief. But there's another layer. Intelligent or highly analytical people may also become unusually sensitive to inconsistency, not because they are magically able to see through everyone, but because pattern recognition is a normal part of cognition. When you pay close attention, repeated behavior becomes easier to notice. A friend says they care about you, but repeatedly disappears when you need them. A coworker talks about teamwork, but takes credit whenever something succeeds. Someone tells you they value honesty, yet changes the truth depending on who is listening. These observations don't automatically reveal someone's intentions, but they can change how you experience a relationship. Once you see a pattern, it becomes difficult to unsee it, and that can create distance, not necessarily because the person thinks they are better than everyone else, but because maintaining a relationship becomes harder when your expectations and observations no longer match reality. This is where the stereotype of the intelligent loner can become misleading. Withdrawal is not always evidence of superior intelligence or deeper understanding. Sometimes people disappear because they are hurt, sometimes because they are overwhelmed, sometimes because they are disappointed, and sometimes because avoiding people has become a learned coping strategy. Imagine someone who has repeatedly felt misunderstood. At first, they explain themselves. Then they try harder. Eventually, they discover that staying quiet creates fewer conflicts. The brain learns from consequences. If withdrawing consistently reduces stress in the short term, withdrawal can become reinforced. You avoid the gathering, and your anxiety drops. You stop answering messages, and the pressure disappears. You cancel the difficult conversation, and the tension goes away. The relief is real, but it can create a trap. Because the more often you withdraw to feel better, the less opportunity you have to discover that some interactions might actually be safe, meaningful, or worth repairing. As people grow older, their attention becomes more selective. Work, family, health, personal goals, and private interests compete for limited time and mental energy. Some friendships survive that transition naturally. Others were held together mostly by proximity, routine, or shared circumstances. If the relationship has no deeper foundation, communication may gradually fade. No dramatic ending is required. This is why disappearance can sometimes be less about rejection and more about reorganization. People are constantly updating their lives, and relationships are part of that process. But highly self-directed people may take this even further. They may become absorbed in a project, skill, business, creative pursuit, or personal problem. When attention becomes deeply focused, social rewards can temporarily lose their priority. A person can care about their friends and still be terrible at maintaining contact. From the outside, it looks like they stopped caring. Inside their mind, it may feel more like, I have too much going on, and I'll reconnect when I can breathe. But here is where the story becomes more uncomfortable. Sometimes disappearing is not a sign of intelligence at all. Sometimes it is avoidance wearing the appearance of independence. A person may tell themselves, I don't need anyone, when what they actually fear is being disappointed, rejected, controlled, or misunderstood. Independence can be healthy, but complete emotional self-sufficiency is often an illusion. Humans are social creatures, and meaningful connection plays an important role in psychological well-being. So how can you tell the difference? You probably can't from the outside. Someone who enjoys solitude may still have deep relationships. Someone who disappears may be protecting their boundaries, or they may be struggling. The behavior alone does not tell you the whole story. A person can analyze an argument brilliantly and still feel lonely afterward. They can understand attachment, communication, and human behavior while struggling to communicate their own feelings. Knowing why something happens is not the same as knowing how to live with it. When life feels noisy, unpredictable, or emotionally demanding, solitude creates a simpler environment. There are fewer variables, fewer expectations, fewer surprises. But solitude works best when it is a choice, not a prison. There is a difference between stepping away because you value your inner world and disappearing because you have stopped believing connection is safe. One creates space, the other creates distance that can eventually become difficult to cross. So if you know someone who has suddenly disappeared, resist the temptation to immediately write a story about them. Maybe they think they are better than everyone. Maybe they are angry. Maybe they are struggling. Maybe they are simply exhausted. You do not know. And if you are the person who keeps disappearing, there is another question worth asking. Am I choosing solitude because it genuinely gives me something, or because it helps me avoid something? That question can reveal more than any personality label ever could, because perhaps the deepest sign of intelligence is not being able to live without people. It is being able to understand when you need distance, when you need connection, and why. The goal is not to become constantly available to everyone. It is not to force yourself into relationships that drain you, and it is certainly not to romanticize loneliness as proof that you are smarter than the people around you. It is to become honest about what your silence is doing for you. Sometimes disappearing is how you recover. Sometimes it is how you protect a boundary. Sometimes it is how you make room for a new chapter. And sometimes, quietly, it is how you avoid being seen. So the next time someone disappears from your life, or you feel the urge to disappear from everyone else's, pause before judging the behavior. Ask what need the distance is serving, because behind withdrawal, there is usually a reason. And understanding that reason may change the way you see not only other people, but yourself. If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology behind everyday human behavior, subscribe to PsycheLens. Because sometimes the most interesting thing about what people do is not the behavior itself, but the invisible process happening underneath it.